Picture this, an eccentric genius running in shorts through the English countryside, his mind juggling problems of war, mathematics, and artificial life. Now, imagine that same man changing the direction of history by unraveling secrets no one else could crack. Today, we step quietly into the world of Alan Turing, the father of computer science and the man whose imagination helped save millions, but who remained, for decades, an unsung hero. Welcome to Echoes Through Time, where history isn't just recounted, it's relived one conversation at a time. I'm your host, and today we travel to a moment when the whir of machines and the silence of secrets shaped the fate of nations. Our story is set in the heart of Britain at Bletchley Park around 1945. Here, Alan Turing, mathematician, philosopher, runner, and codebreaker, pioneered the fight against the seemingly unbreakable enigma. But there's so much more to the man than legend suggests. Quirks, quiet courage, and the seeds of artificial intelligence. It's in this very place, amid mugs chained to radiators and minds trained on the impossible, that we find our subject today. Dew coats the grass of Bletchley Park as dawn breaks, streaks of gold slicing through the English mist. Nervous code breakers with rumpled jackets slip through wooden doors into the famed huts, their footsteps muffled on gravel. Alan Turing's domain sits at the end of a corridor lined with pipes and a pungent tang of machine oil, wires splayed across desks in organized confusion. Inside, the air hums with both anticipation and cigarette smoke, punctuated by the tapping of keys and distant, exasperated grumbles when a circuit fails. Into this blend of secrecy and brilliance, Leo appears, with an innocent grin and the high tops of someone who's never read a dress code. Watch as he tiptoes past a padlocked mug, wonders whether the bike in the corner belongs here, and gawks, open-mouthed, at the legendary Enigma machine glinting on the table.
Wow, this is like stepping into a brain dressed up as a laboratory. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to stare. Are you, Alan Turing?
Yes, I am. The laboratory attire is optional. Hello there. I must say I don't recognize you. Are you one of the new Wrens?
Not quite. I'm, sort of visiting. Temporarily. I mean, I study history? Except I study it by actually being there. Think of me as an extremely lost tourist, crazy about codes.
An unconventional route to Bletchley Park. Did someone send you, or are time travelers now part of Churchill's latest strategy?
I won't say classified, because to be honest, I don't understand half the rules. I just sort of show up wherever the past feels undecided. Are you in the middle of something crucial? It smells like intense thinking and, burnt toast in here.
That would be Mr. Thompson's breakfast, perpetually under attack from German cryptography. But no, I'm only composing a note about the ACE's accumulator register. The work waits. I rather prefer interesting interruptions.
Honestly, it's an honor to meet you. Whenever people talk about computers or artificial intelligence back home, your name comes up, like, all the time. Even on our money. Big deal, right?
On the money, is it? They never tell me anything here. But that's a pleasant surprise, I hope at least in a favorable denomination.
Oh, only the $50 note. Super fancy. You're sandwiched between holograms and will probably get folded into wallets next to supermarket receipts.
Much better than being folded into a desk drawer, which is the fate of most memos here. I've always felt value is a somewhat fluid concept.
So, Alan? Can I call you Alan? I have a million questions. But first, how did you even start down this path? I mean, were you the kid inventing secret alphabets in school, or...
Alan is quite all right. As a boy, I adored puzzles and the laws of nature. I didn't invent secret alphabets, but I certainly scribbled formulae on anything to hand, including, to my mother's deep chagrin, the margins of her good books. My earliest efforts were less about subterfuge and more about deciphering the universe's logic.
Scribbling on good books! My mum would have had a fit. So, you weren't exactly top of the class in everything then? I heard some teachers found you a bit... frustrating.
You could say that. At Sherborne, my masters despaired. One report called my work the worst I have ever seen, and lamented my disregard for the classics. My mother, bless her, was rather embarrassed that I preferred tinkering with science to, say, mastering Latin. Gentlemanly pursuits, they called them. Equations, I found, were more forgiving.
So, while other kids were conjugating verbs, you were... what? Daydreaming about numbers?
Something like that. I remember being utterly captivated by Einstein's work on relativity. While my classmates were probably focused on Caesar's Gallic Wars, I was filling notebooks with my own thoughts on the structure of the universe. It wasn't that I couldn't do the other subjects, they just didn't sing to me, if you understand.
Did you ever imagine, back then, that you'd end up tackling logic puzzles on a global scale? Or was it all more, doodling daisies and daydreaming?
At times I wondered if I would remain a daisy watcher forever. Yet after Christopher Morecombe died, things changed. My work became a form of remembrance, as if by solving the next problem I might for a moment bring him back. His memory still... it's never very far from my equations.
Christopher, the friend who passed away when you were only 17? I'm so sorry. That must have been, really hard.
Yes. I recall writing to his mother. I must put as much energy into my work as if he were alive, because that's what he would like me to do. The pain was immense, but also the engine of everything productive in me. It solidified my belief in materialism, that the spirit is tied to the body.
Gosh. So, basically, the foundations of computer science are built on heartbreak. That makes sense in a way. Did you always believe that science could answer anything, or did it feel like some things, like love or loss, always had to be mysterious?
Early on I flirted with the idea that something, a spirit perhaps, endured beyond death. But my outlook shifted. Now I'm less inclined toward the mystical, more to the material. If we admit certain questions are undecidable, that some things, as in mathematics, cannot be proved or known, we gain both humility and clarity.
So, even in math, you accept uncertainty, like with Gödel's incompleteness and your own proof that some problems can't be solved by algorithms?
Precisely. The Entscheidungsproblem, decision problem. I proved that a machine could not decide every mathematical question. This limits not only machines, but ourselves. The comfort, perhaps, is that it leaves room for creativity and for, mystery.
Can you explain your Turing machine to someone who gets confused by, tying their shoelaces? Hypothetically...
Quite. Imagine a strip of tape, unending, and a head that moves left or right, reading or writing symbols. With a simple set of instructions, this machine can mimic any process that can be described algorithmically. It's the most basic computer conceivable, yet as powerful, in theoretical terms, as the most advanced machines we might ever build.
So even my smartphone, with all its computational power, runs on the fundamental ideas from your 1936 paper?
In essence, yes. Though I did not predict the proliferation of personal cat cinematography, I confess. Von Neumann and others applied the universal architecture I described. Modern machines are, in their bones, Turing machines, capable, given time, of anything a program allows.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. Did this universal machine idea just pop into your head? Or was it a long, slow burn of thinking?
Wait a moment. Your smartphone. And what year did you say you're from? I'm beginning to suspect you're either a Soviet spy with peculiar cover stories or genuinely delusional. Time travel violates fundamental principles of causality. Even I can't devise a machine to solve that particular problem.
Oh, I didn't actually say what year I'm from, but, if I were a spy, would I be this bad at it? And if I were delusional, wouldn't I come up with something more believable than time travel?
An interesting paradox. The truly incompetent spy might feign incompetence as cover, and the clever madman might choose an outlandish delusion precisely because it seems too absurd to fabricate. Either way, you've presented me with a fascinating logical problem.
Look, I can prove it. Your universal machine idea, it revolutionized computing. You'll develop the Turing test for artificial intelligence. Wait, I probably shouldn't tell you your future. That's like rule number 1 of time travel.
A convenient escape clause. Very well, I'll humour you. For now. Though I must say, if you're travelling through time-gathering knowledge, your method seems remarkably inefficient. Like using an Enigma machine to compose a shopping list.
Fair point. So back to your universal machine. Was it a sudden insight or gradual development?
It was a response to Hilbert's Entscheidungsproblem. The question was, is there a definite method to decide the truth of any mathematical statement? I imagined a machine that could perform any computation if it were given the right instructions. The key was realizing that instructions themselves could be treated as data encoded on the tape. It was less a pop and more a gradual clarification, like a photographic plate developing. The implications, however, became clear rather quickly.
Your ideas really are everywhere. Is it true you almost stayed in America, working with von Neumann? Like, what would have happened if you did?
He did invite me. I was at Princeton then, from 1936 to 38, working on my Ph.D. with Alonzo Church. Johnny von Neumann was there, a formidable mind. He offered me a position as his assistant. It was tempting. America was vibrant, intellectually stimulating. But I was homesick, and the atmosphere was changing, war looming. I do wonder sometimes how much further or differently our field might have developed. Yet I am content with my lot. Britain provided a curious sort of freedom, and of course there was a war to help win.
Princeton. So you were hanging out with Church and von Neumann, 2 absolute giants of mathematics. Was it intimidating?
They were certainly brilliant. Church's work on lambda calculus paralleled my own on computability. We often discussed these ideas. Johnny von Neumann was a force of nature. His mind moved astonishingly fast. It wasn't so much intimidating as invigorating. It pushed me to clarify my own thinking. But ultimately, England called me back.
Bletchley Park. That's where you fought your war, right? I imagine it all as spy versus spy, mysterious telegrams and midnight brainstorms. Was it, that exciting?
At times, yes. Though much of our heroism was accompanied by tepid tea and the whirring of hopelessly stubborn machines, our work was more arithmetic than adventure, a race with the clock to pierce enigma before the daily settings changed.
Could you paint a picture of a typical night in Hut 8 when the pressure was really on?
Imagine a dimly lit wooden hut, cold, even in summer. The air thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of overworked electrical equipment. The constant, almost hypnotic clatter of the bombs from nearby huts. That was the soundtrack to our thoughts. We'd have reams of intercepted German signals, just gibberish. And the clock, always the clock, ticking towards midnight, when the enigma settings would change, and all our work might be for nothing. There was an intense, urgent silence, broken only by muttered calculations, the rustle of paper, someone cursing softly when a theory didn't pan out. Exhaustion was a constant companion, but so was a kind of fierce exhilaration when a chink of light appeared.
Can you describe how you approached breaking the Enigma code? It sounds like something only a comic book genius could do. I read the Poles made breakthroughs first, with the bomber.
The Poles were indeed the vanguard, handing us both intelligence and methodology. Their bomba cryptologiczna was ingenious. My primary focus was devising the bomb, an electromechanical machine significantly enhanced by Gordon Welchman's diagonal board, I should add. It searched systematically through possible enigma settings, exploiting known or guessed plaintexts, cribs we called them. I also developed banburismus, a statistical technique to pare down possibilities, a sort of cryptographic triage measured in bands and decibands for convenience, though I found the nomenclature comical.
Gordon Welchman. Bamburismus. That sounds like a Harry Potter spell. Did you name it just to entertain yourself? How did it actually work in simple terms?
Harry Potter? Another of your future references, I presume? You're not very good at this time travel business, are you? Gordon was brilliant. His diagonal board on the bomber significantly increased its effectiveness, allowing us to test multiple hypotheses simultaneously. We wouldn't have had nearly the success we did without his contributions. Teamwork, you see, even if some of us were rather individualistic. As for banburismus, perhaps our terminology did veer toward the whimsical. The ban, short for Banbury sheets where we did the work, just fit. In war, humour survives where logic falters. It worked by scoring the likelihood that two strings of letters, if enciphered with the same enigma rotor settings but slightly offset, would produce a certain pattern. If the score was high enough, a good number of decibands of evidence, it suggested a particular rotor order was more likely. It allowed us to discard many possibilities without testing them on the bombs, saving precious time.
So it was like educated guessing on a massive scale, supercharged by statistics.
A fair summary. It required a certain intuition, but it was grounded in rigorous statistical theory. We'd tear off strips from these Banbury sheets and slide them against each other, looking for correlations. It was rather manual at first, but it was a crucial step before setting the bombs to their tasks. It helped us focus their power.
And you picked Naval Enigma specifically because it was the hardest and no one else wanted it. Is that an Alan Turing thing? Take the puzzle no one wants?
You might say so. I've never been keen on the obvious or simple tasks that others rush to claim. Naval Enigma was devastating convoys. It seemed a logical application of effort. Frankly, the challenge was invigorating. Problems worth doing tend to be the ones most urgently needed.
What about the drama with resources? I read you actually wrote straight to Churchill. Action this day and all that. Were you nervous or just stubborn?
It was a collective plea. 4 of us signed. Hugh Alexander, Stuart Milner Barry, Gordon Welchman, and myself. We were outnumbered by ciphers, lacking the bombs. Protocol said wait, but impatience prevailed. I'm not sure if we were brave or simply exasperated. Churchill's reply was direct, which I appreciated. Action this day. Suddenly all manner of resources arrived, some even useful.
People sometimes claim you won the war just about single-handedly. What's your take on that myth?
Utter nonsense. I was only one among hundreds. The Poles, Gordon Welchman, Joan Clark, Hugh Alexander, and many others, including countless Wrens who operated the machines with such dedication, formed the true strength of Bletchley. Code-breaking is a team endeavour, like running a marathon in relay. I simply had the good fortune to carry some important batons.
If you listen closely, there's a fondness in Turing's voice for his colleagues, those like Joan Clark, who could match his wit and keep pace with his racing mind, and a self-effacing modesty that borders on endearing.
Speaking of Joan Clark, she was kind of your best friend here, right? I hope this isn't too personal, but you even proposed to her once?
Yes, Joan and I are very close. She is remarkable, brilliant, steady, unwavering. Her mind for cryptanalysis is exceptional. She made some crucial breakthroughs herself. I did propose. Later, I told her the truth about myself. She was as unruffled by that as she is by most phenomena. It would not have been fair to her or to me. But we remain dear friends, one of my wisest, in fact.
That's really honest. I like that you always seem to just say what's true, even if it makes things harder.
Pretending is useful in cryptanalysis, less so in life. I do not see the point of falsehood outside the requirements of wartime secrecy, though one must admit society sometimes makes honesty a challenging path. Discretion is often the better part of valor, as they say, especially in these times.
You seem to collect great teammates and odd habits. Is it true you rode your bicycle wearing a gas mask in pollen season? That's just next-level problem solving.
Quite true. I dislike hay fever more than I dislike stairs. Better to appear absurd and breathe easy. My bicycle also has a chain that jumps. Rather than repair it, I calculated the rotations before it's likely to slip, so I can adjust in good time.
You're like the Sherlock Holmes of self-inflicted inconvenience. Did the padlocked mug trick come from the same kind of thinking? And speaking of unusual solutions, I heard a wild story about you burying silver bars during the war.
Desperate times. One cannot underestimate the illicit trade in coffee. Security at Bletchley is paramount, in mugs as much as messages. Ah, the silver. Yes, that is not fiction, unfortunately. Fearing a German invasion, I converted my savings into 2 silver bars and buried them in the woods near Bletchley. I even devised a rather complex cipher to remember the location.
And did you dig it up after the war, rich as a king?
Alas, no. After the war, I found I couldn't break my own cipher, or perhaps my memory of the landscape was faulty. The area had changed. The silver remains undiscovered, or so I suspect. One should never overestimate one's own cleverness in matters of treasure. A rather expensive lesson in humility,
Let's talk about running. Is it true you could almost qualify for the Olympics? And people sometimes saw you jogging the whole way to meetings. In shorts, no less?
I found running cleared my mind. The marathon in 1947, 2 hours, 46 minutes. 11 minutes off the winning Olympic pace, yes. A curious duality. Mathematics sharpens the mind. Running dulls the worries. I've run to London for meetings, which is more agreeable than the train. No tedious small talk. 40 miles it was. I have such a stressful job that the only way I can get it out of my mind is by running hard.
40 miles? Just to avoid small talk? That's dedication. What did it feel like, that kind of extreme running? Was it like solving a problem, but with your body?
There's a point you reach, after many miles, where the body's complaints fade into a kind of rhythm. Your breathing, your stride, the landscape blurring past. It becomes a meditative state. Thoughts untangle themselves. Sometimes the solution to a particularly stubborn mathematical problem would just arrive somewhere around the 30-mile mark. It wasn't so much solving as allowing the solution to surface, a different kind of clarity.
I get tired just thinking about it. But, apart from exercise and code breaking, your later work was all about, thinking machines and the child mind, right?
After the war, I designed the ACE, automatic computing engine, at the National Physical Laboratory. It was to be one of the first electronic stored program machines. My vision was for something truly fast, capable of 1 million operations per second. But my thoughts kept circling back. Could a machine learn? Instead of programming a mind all at once, I reasoned one should build a machine like one teaches a child, with input, correction, encouragement. What we now call machine learning in primitive form.
The ACE! That was your big post-war project. Was it frustrating that it didn't get built exactly as you envisioned, or not as quickly?
Bureaucracy can be a formidable opponent. The NPL had its procedures, its committees. My 1946 paper laid out a fairly complete design, but progress was slow. Frustrating, yes. One wants to see one's ideas take physical form. A smaller pilot ACE was eventually built and worked beautifully, proving the concepts. But by then I had moved to Manchester, where they were making strides with the Mark I. It's the nature of pioneering work, I suppose. One lays a foundation, others build upon it.
That's basically how AI is built now. Only with, more cat memes and fewer vacuum tubes. You even invented the Turing test. If a machine can fool a human in conversation, we call it intelligent. Did you ever worry you'd create something you couldn't control?
I've been accused of optimistic folly. My feeling is, when a machine can converse convincingly, it merits consideration. Perhaps not as human, but as an agent of some kind. Whether that's dangerous or delightful depends, I suppose, on how humanity shapes its creations. One should treat new intelligence, organic or not, with responsibility. The real danger, I suspect, is not machines becoming too intelligent, but humans becoming too reliant on them without understanding their limitations.
Did you ever give your computers pet names or talk to them? Like, as friends?
I confess I've encouraged the Manchester Mark I in gentle tones when it misbehaves. Machines, like people, respond to kindness. At least, so I like to believe. I've been known to call them dear electronic children, to my colleagues' considerable amusement. They can be quite temperamental, you know, with all those vacuum tubes.
Did any of your computers ever beat you at chess? I heard you wrote one of the first chess programs. What was that like?
The computer was not quite powerful enough to run the program, Turochamp as it were, so I played it side by hand, a rather laborious process, taking perhaps half an hour per move. The algorithm, however, could play a passable game. Once it even defeated a colleague, if not a master. It was less an exercise in humiliation and more a proof of concept, that rules and logic could generate surprising, even creative play. It couldn't truly learn then, but it demonstrated that complex behavior could emerge from simple instructions.
Half an hour a move. You must have had a lot of patience. Did you find that your, slight stammer ever made it difficult to get your ideas across, especially with such complex topics? I read once you had a challenging time on a BBC radio program.
Ah, yes. Public speaking is not my forte. My thoughts sometimes arrive faster than my words can keep pace. The BBC interview? Yes, that was rather trying. The machinery of radio, the need for precise timing. It wasn't my natural habitat. One tries to be clear, but the words can be recalcitrant. In small groups or with paper and pencil, it is easier.
Have you started tackling biology now? I found sketches of you watching the daisies grow. Did your curiosity just migrate from machines to nature?
Indeed. I began to wonder, how do patterns like the spiral of a sunflower or stripes on a zebra arise from chemical chaos? My paper on morphogenesis proposes equations where simple diffusion and reaction create organized forms. It's a new adventure. The mechanisms of life don't seem so different from those in computers. Both involve information processing, patterns emerging from rules.
So if you had another lifetime, would you study brains, plants, or, space travel?
The structure of the mind is the greatest puzzle, but I should be delighted to study anything mysterious, so long as the problems remain and the daisies continue to grow.
Alan, do you ever wish the world understood your work better? Or you, for that matter? So much of it is covered in secrecy.
Recognition is fleeting and privacy more so. If society honors the work someday, well and good. The mathematics remains regardless. The only recognition I yearned for was from those closest, perhaps from Christopher still. As for understanding, well, the work is complex. One hopes it speaks for itself eventually. Secrecy, of course, is a heavy cloak.
Switching gears for a second, do you ever get frustrated by bureaucracy? I read you once buried silver in the woods to hide it from the Nazis, then lost the map because you'd coded it too well for even yourself to crack.
That is not fiction, unfortunately. The silver remains undiscovered, or so I suspect. One should never overestimate his own cleverness in matters of treasure.
I think modern folks still lose their Bitcoin passwords in digital wallets, so you're totally not alone. Last few questions, if you don't mind. In your era, well, facing challenges I can hardly imagine. Society has rules about, who people can love. That's not right. Does it ever make you want to stop fighting or inventing or being yourself?
It can be desperately lonely. There are pressures, certainly. One learns to be discreet. But to hide completely would be to erase myself, and that I won't do. I see no shame in loving as I do, or in being different. If history is to remember me, let it be as someone who lived honestly, not as someone who cowered. Though honesty has its own price in these times.
For what it's worth, many years from now, that honesty becomes a kind of beacon. People around the world will celebrate your genius, but also the courage you showed. They'll even pass laws to undo those old wrongs, starting with your name.
That is unexpected, and more comforting than you may realize. Perhaps the future improves, if only by inches at first. One hopes that understanding grows.
You're also on a ton of statues. One with an apple, like Snow White. Oh, also not to be weird, but there's a myth that Apple, the the big computer company, designed their logo as a tribute to you. True? False?
Entirely apocryphal, unless these gentlemen at Apple consulted my ghost. Apples are for eating, not branding, in my view, though I am partial to them. The Snow-White connection is rather morbid, wouldn't you say?
I'll set the record straight. Is there a quote you want remembered for? There's that one about seeing only a short distance ahead, but plenty that get made up on the internet.
I think that sentiment holds. We can see only a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. It was true when I wrote it, and I imagine it remains so. If that remains true in your time, I hope you press on with the work, whatever machines or mysteries you meet.
One last thing. If you could send a message to the future, a line to the scientists or to anyone who feels like they don't fit, what would you say?
Trust in your own logic, don't apologize for your oddities, and care for those whose voices are not often heard. The world will catch up, if slowly, and never ever let anyone tell you that you are less than simply because you are different.
Thank you, Alan. For everything. For the codes, the computers, the courage. I hope one day you get to see just how far your thinking travels.
Thank you, Leo, though I think the journey is yours as well. Safe travels, temporal and otherwise, and do try not to get lost too often.
I think Alan Turing taught me that it's not just ideas or equations that change the world, but the courage behind them. Whether inventing universes out of algorithms, running 40 miles to a meeting, or just locking up your coffee so nobody nicks it, all those quirks are part of the journey. Alan saw the beauty in mystery, insisted on truth, and believed that sooner or later the world would learn to listen, even to voices it barely understood. And through computers, code, or kindness, he's still speaking to us every single day.
You've been listening to Echoes Through Time. In our journey to Bletchley Park, we've glimpsed not just the birth of modern computing, but the personal cost of genius in an unforgiving era. Turing's legacy extends beyond his mathematical brilliance. It challenges us to question what we value and who we silence. His posthumous pardon in 2013 came decades too late, but reminds us that history's judgment is never final. As our digital world evolves from his foundational ideas, perhaps we're still catching up to the man himself. Until next time, keep listening for the echoes that shape tomorrow.